Going on, everyone? John Matrix here. Hope you're having yourselves a wonderful day. We're going to be checking out the next episode in the Daybreak series on Mr. Illustrated's channel. This is going to be SCP-001, When Day Breaks, The Voices. Links will be down below in the description, as always, to the original video without my commentary and reaction, and to Mr. Illustrated's channel. Please do me a favor, if you enjoy this video as we go through it, go over there and give it a like. And if you enjoy Mr. Illustrated's content, and you're not already subbed to him, please do me a favor, go check out his channel and hit that sub button. He definitely deserves some love, makes a lot of wonderful content for the SCP universe, and puts a lot of time and effort into animating and illustrating, you know, a lot of the SCP articles. So do me a favor, go over there, check out his channel, give him a sub if you like his content. If you'd like to join us when we do these reactions live, there is a join button underneath the video, as well as a link in the description to the YouTube membership benefits and tiers that I offer. If you've been around the channel for a while, decide you want to take your support to the next level, do me a favor, check those out, see if any of that would have any kind of interest for you. Get early access to videos, priority in any kind of reaction requests, etc., etc. So if you have any interest in that, take a look if you decide you want to go to the next level. But regardless of all that, let's get into this video here. Again, SCP-001, When Day Breaks, The Voices, by Mr. Illustrated. Turn the volume up just a tad here.
Good day, everyone, and welcome back to SCP Illustrated, entry log 126. The time has come for another When Day Breaks, and today I bring you 100 Voices, another entry into the story written by myself and Dr. Sumerian. Be sure to go and check out his channel for more SCP content. Now, in this one, we are taking a step back from SCP places and instead focusing on just one everyday person trying to survive in the When Day Breaks world.
Interesting.
Be
okay.
advised, this video contains extremely graphic violence and blood and gore.
Extremely graphic violence.
And without further ado, let's begin.
That's just a creepy
The following data
picture.
release has been authorized by the following council members and administration staff.
This time you're in charge of the L5 Council. L51 has gone missing, presumed lost. Understood. Need an update on Bright. He was on his way to Site 19 when we lost contact. Task your crew to ascertain the situation. We can continue the operation without him. We need him in the amulet for the operation to have any chance of success. Site 19 is a dead zone, the flesh has overwhelmed it, and the lower levels are sealed. The place still needs a couple weeks for the fallout to decay. Can't wait that long. Let's send Beta 7 to find them. The techs will start working on override for the lockdown. It won't take them long. Not the fire eaters. Indisposed, considered the fallout. Beta 7 fit the bill. Understood. Time is too short. Move quickly. Eclipse is approaching. We must be ready. Yes, Administrator. Interesting. Okay. So, obviously, they have some kind of purpose for Dr. Bright and the amulet. I wonder what it really could be. From what I understand, Dr. Bright's soul is essentially trapped in this amulet, and he is only able to essentially come out when someone else picks up the amulet, and he kind of takes over their body. So I wonder what kind of use they would think they would have. Is there some kind of way where they could, you know, put an amulet on one of these flesh creatures and have him take over that body, and maybe his consciousness could then go and, like, we have some kind of Professor X, you know, in the subconscious mind battle between him and whatever this entity is that is taking over the world. You know, I don't know. Let's continue.
It is sometimes thought that darkness is required for the worst evils in the world to occur. Of course, that is untrue. The worst things have all happened in the light. This city was no different. People came here like locusts from the east to live beside the ocean.
It's taking place in San Francisco, it seems.
They lived the rest of their lives there carelessly.
Golden Gate Bridge.
But the sun saw it all. The people forgot where they came from. Forgot what they'd done to get here. Forgot everything but a life of sin in the California sun. Yet, underground here, buried deep,
dream of Californication.
Blood called out for blood.
Blood for the blood god.
Jacobs was a history teacher, a husband, and a father 23 days ago. Today, He was a survivor. He'd been walking through the sins of Los Angeles for most of that time. Drainage pipes and sewer lines crisscrossed the City of Angels, big enough in more than a few places for men and women to walk, and run, and hide. He could only imagine how other people living in big cities had managed to survive when the sun went weird. It was a sudden thing, the end. He'd always imagined some sort of lead-up, news anchors wishing you well and going off air for the last time. There was none of that.
Yeah, I don't...
One moment everything was fine.
I feel like that would be more of the case, right? I feel like if the world is going to come to a sudden and abrupt end, there wouldn't be any, last sign-offs that would just happen. And then we'd be dealing with the aftermath of that, at least anyone who survived.
And the next...
it's one of those things where if there was some kind of asteroid that was for sure going to collide with the planet, would the powers that be, the governments of the world, let people know or not? Because, would they inform them and, mass hysteria could break out, riots all along, everywhere before the end, et cetera, or, could potentially people have a peace of mind knowing that they only have so much time left to spend with their families, or would they not tell anyone and it would just happen and people would be dealing with the aftermath? That is a question that's posed. And so I feel like it would probably be something along those lines of, we probably wouldn't really know until we'd be dealing with the aftermath. But anyway.
There was none of that. One moment everything was fine, and the next the streets ran quick and heavy with melted flesh. David had encountered 2 survivors since then. Both, oddly enough, had flamethrowers. It didn't take much intelligence to realise that perhaps owning one was a positive factor towards survival.
Yep.
The monsters above had some sort of instinctual fear of flame. In sufficient force, it would scream and try to overcome it. But in isolation, it shrank away, never fleeing too far. Always...
It's curious that the sun seems to be the cause of this, yet it's afraid of fire.
Waiting, looking for an opening, waiting for the flames to die down. He'd stolen the one in his hands now from someone who'd stumbled at the wrong time and fell into the warped hands of the monster above. David shook that memory out of his mind as he made his way down the tunnels. He'd become accustomed to the slow drip of water from the walls, to the smell, to the constant fear that a crack to the surface might expose him to the sun. Then came a sound he did not recognize at first. It was like a cat mewling in the distance, but distorted. He turned a corner and found himself in an open area. On the ground were remains, blankets and sleeping bags left ripped and upturned, embers still burning in the fire barrel, tools and sticks and weapons left strewn about the floor.
Yeah, found some kind of living area for someone.
Unmistakable signs of a badly wounded person being dragged away. His eyes lingered on some children's magazines he had seen before. He stole his eyes away to observe a massive opening in the wall on the far side of the room. Rubble and stone lay strewn about the opening. Sunlight poured in around the edges of the hole.
So that brings up a question that I've kind of had as we've gone through this, right? Like, you look at this art piece in this scenario. The sun is supposed to be affecting people, right? So, like, is it a situation where you have to be in, like, direct sunlight for it to affect you? Or would the diffused light being bounced off the walls still affect you? Because from what has been said, even at night, if there's a full moon out, it still affects people. So even the light bouncing off of the moon is powerful enough to cause issues for people. So would he right now, standing where he is with the diffused light coming through, would he be affected? Or, you know, is it a situation where the clothing he has on might protect him? Because one of the earlier stories said someone traveling to a different site. I would assume it sounded like he was out in the sun at some point in time. So perhaps, you know, if the right amount of clothing, you could protect yourself. I don't know. Anyway, let's continue.
Stone lay strewn about the opening. Sunlight poured in around the edges of the hole. David instinctively took a step back around the corner. Had it gotten him? He wasn't sure. but he thought that the panic was
imagine being afraid of sunlight, man.
He didn't feel a need to go to the surface to greet the sun.
Like, imagine, like, the sun is the thing that gives us and provides the life that we have on this planet. So imagine, like, literally at all costs avoiding sunlight.
So he had to imagine he was fine. The mewling noise stopped. David's eyebrow perked up.
Hello?
He offered into the darkness. Nothing answered back, but a soft shuffling started immediately. David gripped his flamethrower hard and lit the pilot light inside the flame guard.
I would do the same thing.
David backed further away from the corner, keeping his weapon trained. It came closer and closer, a soft shuffling. Thump, thump, thump. David knew it was right around the corner. His jaw tensed and his fingers hovered over the trigger, ready to engulf the monster in flame. Matted hair, dirty skin, and bloodshot eyes appeared slowly from around the corner. As the full form of the entity made itself known, David was shocked to see a child, a young girl.
Damn.
No older than 8, maybe 10. For a moment, they just stared at each other. David approached the girl. Her bloodshot eyes suddenly glowed a brilliant amber as the flame reflected off of them. She retreated back against the wall.
Oh, sorry,
he said, before lowering his flamethrower.
It's all right. I'm not going to hurt you.
That would be such a strange situation to be in, right? Like, I would be very conflicted if I were in this situation, because you're in an absolute survival situation, and an 8-year-old, I mean, like, you're trying to, like, think about the survival of the species, but also you're trying to think about the survival of yourself. And so, like, you know, obviously you have a child, she can grow up and benefit humanity, and who knows what she could do, but at the same time, she's presently a child and you're in an extreme survival situation. You know, having to watch over, you know, a kid in these situations is gonna be rough. So it's like, do you risk taking her along with you, having her expose you to other new dangers, not being physically capable of being kept up? You know, from the sounds of this, she's malnourished, weak. You're gonna have to give up your food, water, rations, etc. to help, you know, keep her alive, get her back up to strength so she can travel, you know. So that'd be a tough call, man. I don't know what I would do in that situation, to be honest. I don't know what I would do. I would like to think that I would try to help as best I could, but at the same time, right, like, it's a huge risk, because again, even just giving her food and water and then moving on, you're still giving up some of your own, you know, ability to survive, because who knows when you're going to get more food, more water, etc. I don't know. That's a tough situation.
Before lowering his flamethrower.
It's all right. I'm not going to hurt you,
David said, putting a hesitant hand out to comfort the child.
What's your name?
The child said nothing, but fresh tears began to stream down her cheeks.
That camp. It looks like it was very recently abandoned. Is that where you're from?
The little lady sank to her knees as her eyes welled up with more tears. David swung his head around to look back over the deserted campsite once more. A man smiled as he tucked his daughter into bed with the rest of the children. The small community of 12 survivors had built something of real substance here. There were only 9 able-bodied adults if the worst came to pass. Still, there was cheer. For days now, they'd been able to make small raids on the surface for supplies. Cans and bottles from the nearby grocery store were lined up along the south wall of the camp, enough for weeks of survival if necessary. At the centre of the chamber was a small campfire, as large as they could make it without making the entire chamber fill with smoke. All around the campsite were makeshift tables made of abandoned junk. A table-sized wooden spool here, a hunk of metal with a flat top there. Small things that made it almost feel like home.
Yeah, so it sounds like, you know, a family group of people here made this their home and we're just surviving.
Wooden spool, there was a chessboard with pieces already placed. Nearby, just off the floor, were a Monopoly board and a selection of books and magazines for the children.
At least they had stuff to do.
Interesting to the single eye that had pushed itself through one of the nearby pipes.
Jesus.
It then slowly poured out of the pipe, little by little before finally dropping down onto the pipes above the group. It slid along the cold metal, looking down on the group around the fire beneath it. The flesh rippled shades of yellow and orange as it slid its way further into the chamber. One man in particular...
If you guys, it's a movie from the 80s, so I don't know how many people would have seen it or not, but if you've watched a movie called The Blob, which I believe the 80s is a remake of a movie from the 50s or whatever, that's what this stuff really kind of reminds me of. It's like this gelatinous thing from outer space that's come down here and that just like consumes everything, but it can morph and mold itself into, you know, through pipes and drains and all kinds of weird stuff, and only really like fire and cold kind of seems to do anything against it. So I often wonder as we're going through these videos if whoever wrote the original, you know, article for this SCP, did they, you know, is that an inspiration, you know, for this?
Stood out to it, slid its way further into the chamber. One man in particular stood out to it. He had a habit of swinging his head back when he laughed. It maneuvered itself just above the man and waited. Before long, another echoing round of laughter filled the campsite, and the flesh made its move. The round of laughter was interrupted by the sound of coughing and spluttering as the man dropped to the floor, clutching his throat. Others rushed over to help.
Imagine being an 8-year-old kid and watching this happen to people you care about.
Expand. His abdomen became momentarily distended before the man's torso exploded. The others stood there covered in blood and gore and watched in horror as the crimson body of a flesh creature rose up out of their former friend. From the grating by the children's area, a single tendril snaked out and wrapped itself firmly around the leg of a woman. The whole group froze for a moment, looking down with wide eyes at the woman's leg, before she was pulled off her feet and into the darkness. She shrieked, and a loud cracking noise came from her leg. She grasped at anything that could hold her, but the only thing between her and it was a support column. Her fingernails were ripped from her hand as she clung on in vain. When she reached the grating, more tendrils wrapped around her, pulling her down into the grate. Her screams stopped as the breath was pressed out of her lungs. Then the bottom half of her body began to be pulled through the inch-sized holes into the darkness below. A groan and a creak betrayed the weakness of the metal grating, and it bent in half under the pressure. The remaining adults grabbed torches and weapons and ran towards the grating. At first they meant to save the woman.
The artwork is doing a good job of displaying, you know, like just this idea of this silhouetted body with this, you know, red tendrils of flesh either dropping out of it or protruding up to attack it, or, you know, this guy, this it almost actually, now that I look at it a little bit further, looks like it's going through a grating underneath here and is getting ready to pull them down. So can you imagine like this body being cut up into these little square chunks as you're getting pulled through this? Yikes.
Weapons and ran towards the grating. At first they meant to save the woman, but the bottom third of her body had already been smashed into paste by the process. Her face was frozen, eyes wide, mouth hanging open. The creaking metal beneath her gave way as she disappeared from view. A new flesh monster under the grate pushed itself back out of the hole and began to skitter across the floor after the men and women. An echoing crash came from behind the group, who all turned to see the wall fall apart. Several colossal conglomerates of flesh fell out of the hole and began flooding the chamber. Cracks and holes began opening up all around them as more and more flesh tendrils began finding their way through.
You know, I wonder, like, are these things, I mean, it's instinctually wanting to, like, gather all humans together, seemingly to collect them all in some kind of, like, hive mind, Borg-like, I guess, thing, you know? But I wonder if there's, like, some kind of also, like, instinctual hunger, right? Does it want to consume the bodies for sustenance? Does it need to consume them for sustenance? Or is it just, like, kind of like the Tyranids or the Zerg, or something like that, where it just consumes them for like biomass to expand itself, you know, while also consuming its soul and consciousness and mind of the person as well to add it to the collective, you know? Is it all of those things?
The nearest man to a pole was grasped immediately by a
Yikes, got ripped in half, brother.
They both wrapped around the man and pulled hard. He cried out for help, but the rest of the survivors were already running. Both creatures were reluctant to relinquish their prize, and before long a soft, squelching noise was followed by the man tearing in half. Both halves of his body fell to the floor with a thud. The remains were swiftly pulled from view. Another of the men hid in a hole near the outskirts of the camp.
Again, like, can you imagine just watching this, though? Like, being a kid and just seeing this and, like, just that feeling of helplessness. I mean, even as an adult, right? Like, what can you really do against that? How could you really protect yourself? You know? Like, you don't have any real weapons. The only weapons that seem to be effective are either fire or cold-based weapons. And if you don't have a flamethrower, what are you going to do? You can sit there with the torch and, like, swing, you know, a piece of wood with some fire on it? That's not going to do anything. You know what I mean? Like, what are you supposed to do? Other than, I guess, try to run and escape, which seems futile.
There was no light here. He was trying to keep his breathing under control. The slow drip of an open pipe behind him was drowned out almost entirely by the screams of his former companions as they were tracked down one by one. The last scream cut off, and he closed his eyes. A soft patter of something warm started to drip on his head from above. He looked up, and the lifeless eyes of a woman stared down at him, bleeding from the mouth. Suddenly, she was snatched out of view, and he held his breath. One of the open pipes behind him, about half a foot in width, grew a pair of eyeballs and looked at the man. He felt himself begin to hyperventilate as a cacophony of voices headed his way. He felt something slick and wet tighten around his ankle. As he was violently pulled from his hiding place, he struggled and flailed, but more tendrils ensnared him. Brought back to the chamber, he saw the remains of his former friends now standing as flesh creatures. The flesh had worked holes into the tunnel ceiling, and sunbeams were now streaming in. He pleaded and cried, but gained no favour. He saw a blinding light, felt the warmth on his skin, and then felt his face slide off his head.
God, that description. He felt his face slide off his head. Like, ugh. Like, just the imagery and the imagined feeling of that. Like, I have a pretty vivid imagination, and so it's like, the idea of, like, being dragged into sunlight, something that just feels like so warm and comforting on your body, you know, that, like, half a second of that warmth and, like, comforting feeling then being changed into your face, the feeling of your face, your flesh, your skin being slid off of your body, and the kind of, like, pain and, like, burning sensation that must have. Jesus.
David and the girl explored the campsite, pausing for a second by the small, colourful sleeping bags.
Were one of these yours?
David asked. She sniffed, but remained silent.
Question I would have too is, how did she survive, right? Like, how did she manage to hide and get away without getting taken?
David began going through the various cans of food and bottled water. He stumbled in shock as a rat sprinted out of an...
See, now, that would be another thing that I would wonder, right? Like, this, whatever these entities are, seem to be intelligent and understand how people work. I would assume, right? It seems to be the case. If I were a smart creature like that, knowing that people eat out of cans and, you know, they gotta have food, they gotta have water, etc., just leave a little bit of something, just the smallest, little, tiniest speck of piece of flesh, whatever, that put it in food, put it in the water. So someone ingests it and then like they get converted. If that's how it in fact works, leave a little piece of you behind in the food and the water in case someone finds it when you're, the main part of you or any of the other parts of you aren't around. And, that's what I would do if I was this entity, so you got to wonder, I would think as David, is that something that these things could do? Would this food be safe? Would the water be safe? And then how would you be able to even find safe food and water other than you hunt down an animal that is an actual animal and you skin it, butcher it, and cook it right there. Or vegetables or whatever that you've actually picked from the ground or off of the vine or whatever,
Various cans of food and bottled water. He stumbled in shock as a rat sprinted out of an empty can at his feet and carelessly knocked into one of the makeshift tables. Time slowed to a crawl as he watched a glass bottle wobble and then fall. The sound of smashing glass filled the entire chamber.
Yeah.
David felt his blood turn
My heart
cold
would jump right
and
there.
all the hairs on his neck stand up. The girl turned to look at him as the sound of wet thumping and whispering began to fill their ears.
Yep, time to go.
At that moment, the campsite erupted in flesh, seeping from the walls out of the pipes, coming up from the floor. The ground shook with the force of the monsters closing in on them. He beckoned at the child, but she didn't move at all, and David made his decision. He ran. Alone.
I mean, yeah, see? That's what I'm talking about. That's what I was saying earlier. What can you really do? Because, again, she's just a child, and... are you going to risk your life to save her when in a situation like that where she freezes, right? Put you both at risk. That's a tough situation, man. That's a tough situation.
His footsteps on the dirty stone floor were rapid and accompanied by the sound of the child behind him. He felt just a slight twinge of relief on top of his fear. The sound of the flesh breaking through the walls was much more distant now, and he stopped for just a moment to regain his breath. The child was upon him almost immediately. They gave each other a knowing look and continued down the tunnel.
At least she's changed her mind. She's keeping up now.
A thin sliver of flesh appeared in front of them, emerging from the wall on his left and stretching across the tunnel at head level. David ducked underneath it and kept running. The thin piece of flesh grew legs and began to slowly
That would be
after.
terrifying.
David turned around another
use flamethrower. That's what I was going to say.
He stepped forward and...
you're in front of them now. Create a barrier or fire or whatever, I would have... I was going to say I would have, as much of an arsenal of Molotovs and things like that as I could at the ready. It's I could throw it at them and or create a zone and or barrier of fire between me and these creatures so I could try to escape in a situation just like this. But at the same time, carrying kerosene and gasoline around and glass bottles is going to be pretty precarious, especially in situations where you're running and you have a flamethrower, one of them breaks and you get covered in gas or kerosene. Then you can't really use your flamethrower. Otherwise, you're going to go up and fire yourself, so. But then again, maybe that would be a better way of going out than having one of these things get you. You know what I mean?
David turned around another corner to find a mass of flesh blocking the way. He stepped forward and slung his flamethrower into position. The flesh screeched and shrank away from the flames. The sewer water at their feet sizzled in the heat, and the way ahead was momentarily clear. Still wary, David and the child continued their flight.
And where are they gonna go, right? Because they're stuck in the sewers. They can't really get out to where the light is because obviously sunlight, that's bad. Maybe he's got clothing that can protect himself somewhere, but it doesn't seem like she does. She doesn't have any kind of helmet or face covering like he does, so she would get exposed. So yeah, where are you gonna go? And it would seem like the sewers would be prime real estate where people would be for cover, especially in big cities. So you would think the sewers would be filled with this stuff. They would even probably have certain sections again, if I were an intelligent creature and I have enough, you know, biomass and understanding of the layout of the city, you just sit there and you just keep filling up the sewers in different areas and forcing people to go to certain areas and then just surround them and box them in. And eventually you just close the area in until there's nowhere else for them to go, you know? So you would think, like, eventually you would come to a point where there just is nowhere to go in the sewers. Unless you fight your way out of it, you know, with whatever tools you have. You know, he's got a flamethrower. He could potentially cut a way through with it, I guess.
They were nearing David's home at this point. He had to assume it was compromised as well. The Flash was most likely making a full attack on the sewer system, flushing out anyone it could find.
Yeah.
It was midday, so escape topside was impossible.
Yeah.
He knew of only one place that could provide any sort of safety, and the burning pain in his lungs and sides pushed him towards it. At the end of this hallway was a maintenance closet, big enough for both of them and fairly new. He couldn't recall if it had any cracks in the walls, but it definitely had no open pipes. This was his last fallback, and he'd stocked it with a few days' worth of food and water. If he could just make it to the night, maybe he could blaze a trail to the surface, and maybe some additional cloth protection would help protect him from the moonlight. Maybe. He opened the door, ushered in the child, and closed it. For a few minutes there was no noise at all. Then, just outside, a slight splash, almost not loud enough to hear. Then another. Then a chorus. David put his hand on the flamethrower trigger and aimed it at the door.
Could you just imagine just being in that situation? You know, like, now you're trapped in a room, and honestly, they know you're there, and I mean, maybe it knows, maybe it doesn't know that there could potentially be another way out or not, you know? But they have all the time in the world. They could just sit there and wait it out. And there's really nothing you could do, right? And eventually your flamethrower is going to run out of fuel. So what can you do?
The child was as far away from the pilot light flame as she could get in the corner of the room. David looked at the child and put a finger up to his mouth. He made a slight shushing noise, and the child nodded, crying silently. The smell in the room was a mix of cleaning chemicals, mouldy wood, sewer water, and the fuel from his weapon. No other light sources beyond his weapon illuminated the surroundings. In the flickering light, liquid flesh began to seep in from the small gap beneath the door. David gave the trigger a slight tap, and a bit of flame shot towards the bottom of the door. The flesh screeched and disappeared. The light flame continued burning for a dozen or so seconds, and then slowly died.
And again, so, like, now you're in a situation, okay, you've got a flamethrower, it knows you have a weapon to deter it, but you're also trapped. And again, you can wait it out. It could sit there and keep testing you, eventually wear out your fuel. It could wait for you to try to fall asleep. Eventually, you're going to have to sleep. You're going to have to, you know, whether it's voluntary or not, you're going to pass out. And eventually, it'll get you, you know? So, like, you have to make your move before you get too tired. I don't know, man. That's a rough situation, dude. Like, what do you do? Unless you have another way out of there, how is he gonna get out of this? You know? Like, you see, I was gonna say, like, could he somehow sacrifice himself for the kid? You know, is it gonna be a situation like that where he runs out of here, tries to lead it down a different corridor away from the kid so the kid can try to escape, but then it's like, where's the kid gonna go? The kid has no idea where to go. Even the surface isn't necessarily safe. So, I mean, what are you gonna do?
David let himself smile. He turned his head to check on the child who was huddled up crying.
Hey, we're going to be okay.
I don't know about that, brother.
She remained silent.
Can you even understand what I'm saying?
She turned to look up at him. 100 voices combined into one as she gurgled out,
Yes, David.
She's one of them.
It took a moment for David to realize, but it was already too late.
Yeah.
A fleshy appendage replaced the child's arm as it whipped the flamethrower from David's hand.
Damn, she was one of them the whole time, right? I mean, I assume, right? Like, that's getting into kind of like Terminator levels of shit, right? Like, you know, being a spy and whatnot. I mean, it would kind of be suspect to begin with, right? Because she's not talking. And the question, again, that I brought up earlier is like, how does she survive? Like, where does she go? How did she hide? Because no one else made it, right? So I guess it was kind of like somewhat obvious that she was one of these things because she didn't say anything to give away that, you know, her voice wouldn't be normal. And the fact that she's the only survivor out of everyone. But it was smart, you know, to play it how it did, you know, again, showing the signs of intelligence, acting like a child to follow him, potentially to get him to lead her to what could be another group that she could then infiltrate and take over. That's some Terminator shit, you know what I'm saying?
While another hit him hard in the chest. Winded and clutching a fractured sternum, David looked up at the child that was now standing over him. From its head to its stomach, the creature split.
Damn, now it's going into the thing here,
revealing a beak filled with teeth. He tried to wheeze out some words of protest, but the flesh cut him off.
David, please, don't fight this.
A distinct female voice spoke. He recognized the voice. It belonged to someone he had known since he was a young man.
Alicia!
He choked.
Yes, my love. We are all here, David. All of us. William is walking again. The sun fixed him. Oh, you should see him now.
That's messed up, man.
Keep him still.
Pulling the heartstrings.
And Megan, she gets bigger every day. Wasn't she a little angel the last time you saw her? She was just taking her first steps.
Dude, the like wet, like slapping noises in the background. She's talking like, ugh. A great little effect added here.
Even your old dad is up here with them, but the children miss their father. Please, it's time to come home.
As he heard his children's names, he wailed and wept before the flesh. Reminded of the day he lost them. The day he lost them all. Fear, anger, sadness, and finally acceptance. Resigning to his fate, David dropped his head as the beak closed around him. The flesh didn't speak. It crushed the door from the outside, and the little girl monster walked out, dragging the dead man behind her. He was unceremoniously dropped to the floor before another flesh creature carried him away. Alicia's voice quickly melted into 100 others as the flesh child quickly returned to its previous form. Strands of flesh flattened to create hair, while white opal spheres filled the eye sockets. The low light of the tunnels had proven quite the boon to the flesh. Though few, the unnatural features that did present themselves were always overlooked. It then went back into the tunnels to look for more survivors.
Yeah, smart, man. Intelligent. Damn. David got hoodwinked.
And that concludes 100 voices. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did. Massive thank you to Lumi and Hydro for helping me with the voices in this video. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you for being so patient. This one took a lot of effort to get done. The next When Day Breaks will be here in February. The next video for this month will be the SCP summarized at the end of it. And then going into November, we've got some big SCPs coming out. Make sure you are following all the social media outlets for video updates, and of course, check out the shop to get your own posters and prints. All the links can be found below. And if you can't wait days and weeks for new material...
Cool. Well, there we go. Go check out all of his stuff. I'm sure he's got, you know, links all down here below the video for his Patreon, for his merch, for all of his stuff he does. See right here. SCP cards merch. He's got his Twitter at Mr. Illustrated SCP, Instagram SCP_Illustrated, Facebook at SCP Illustrated. Go check out all the stuff. He's got links to the other people that helped him out, Kamiran's channel, Lumi's channel, etc., etc. So, like I said, links as always will be down below in the description to the original video and to Mr. Illustrated channel. So please go over there, click this, click the link if you enjoyed this video. And if you enjoy Mr. Illustrated stuff, you know, go over there, give him a sub at least. Check out his Patreon if you'd like to. If you want to take your support for him to that next level, and you know, check out his merch. Great video though, great video, great story. It really kind of, for me, kind of blended together, you know, a few movies like I've mentioned before, that I grew up, you know, with watching. The Blob, The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, stuff like that. It really, the story kind of feels like almost an amalgamation of those two things put together in the SCP universe. I guess looking back at it now, it is kind of obvious, you know, that the girl was one of these flesh monsters. I had kind of reservations, you know, as I'd mentioned earlier. How did she survive? And the fact that she didn't say anything because she can't sound normal is a good trick. And as he'd mentioned at the end of the video, the dark lighting in the sewers masks any kind of imperfections. And I mean, it's a smart tactic. It obviously shows that these creatures having, you know, whatever they are, whatever it is very intelligent. And it uses the heartstrings of kids to get people to lead them back to their groups, where it then, you know, pulls the thing and starts taking them over, potentially one by one, or just outright leading the horde there. So very interesting, very good story in this Daybreak series, and I look forward to continuing on to the next video. So yeah, like I said, links down below in the description to Mr. Illustrated's channel, to the original video, so please check these out. If you'd like to join us when we do these reactions live, there is a join button underneath the video, as well as a link in the description to the YouTube membership benefits and tiers that I offer. If you've been around the channel for a while and decide you want to take your support to the next level, you know, check those out. If you have any interest in that, you can get early access to videos, you can get priority in any kind of reaction requests you might have, etc., etc. There is a, you know, members Discord channel, which if you are a member, make sure, if you have Discord and you want to join, you obviously don't have to, but if you have Discord and you want to join, and I would encourage you to join our Discord, make sure you sync your Discord in your YouTube account so that you can get access to that. And that is often you know, a place where I have, you know, the members link their reaction requests and stuff like that. So if you are a member and you want me to do any kind of reactions, if you have any requests for videos, that's the best place to put them. So I would encourage you to, you know, do that. You know, link your Discord and YouTube channels together and join the Discord, and you know, come join us there. But obviously you don't have to if you don't want to. But with all that said, thank you guys for watching. Hope you're having yourselves a wonderful day. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider leaving a like and a subs. It helps me and the channel grow. And yeah, I greatly appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to watch the video. So thank you very much. Have a good one. We'll see you on the next.